Hello, everyone, and there's a few Star Trek related things I wanted to talk about today. Just a couple subjects I wanted to discuss. First off, is I want to talk a little bit more about the new Star Trek series that's coming out. So, StarTrek.com just released a sort of news post talking about it. I want to go over some of the things that are talking about it, and why I'm not, why some of them are not very reassuring. Now, I want to preface what I'm going to say here with I am excited that Star Trek is returning to television. I am very intrigued with where Brian Fuller is going to take this series, especially since he has um, Nicholas Mayer as a consultant. Nicholas Mayer is one of the people who was responsible for shaping the motion picture era of Star Trek. He's the person responsible for essentially everything you remember from those movies. He's the one responsible, for example, for the maroon uniforms that were used, monster maroons as some call them, that were used in those films. A very naval sort of Starfleet aesthetic that those films had, and his influence is shown throughout those films all the way into Star Trek Voyager. Whenever they show the era of Star Trek, it's called the Lost Era, which is the large expanse of time between Star Trek 6 and the beginning of Star Trek The Next Generation. They always show those red uniforms. Starfleet used them for a very long time, apparently, and not Harv Bennett, but Nicholas Mayer was the one responsible for that aesthetic. He basically he watched the original series before writing Wrath of Khan and essentially interpreted Star Trek as Horatio Hornblower in space and decided to make the Federation much more, or Starfleet, a much more naval sort of arm of the Federation than was previously sort of shown. Like before in the original series, Kirk referred to Starfleet as a joined service when 20th century pilot asked him if they were in like an Air Force or a Navy, sort of not understanding like how things had changed and sort of like how the context of what Starfleet did was so far away from the context of his military and what he did. So Nicholas Mayer, a smart choice to consult with on the tone and feel of a new series, especially if that series is going to be set in the lost era of Trek. And I previously referred to this. The lost era of Trek is that space of time between Undiscovered Country and TNG. We've heard a lot about what happened in this very long stretch of history. Um, but we have never really seen any of it. It's mostly just been referred to, and it's sort of what we know of the Lost Era. Sort of is this story of great change, sweeping change throughout the galaxy, leading into a golden era of exploration. Picard, the series lead from TNG, the captain of the Enterprise D, had previously embarked on, say, a 20-year mission of exploration aboard the Stargazer before taking command of the Enterprise. In fact, there was time for the Stargazer to go on this huge long term mission and then be destroyed, and then for Picard to sort of chill for a while before taking command of the Enterprise D. So this is a very long stretch of time. Uh, there was also a conflict with the Cardassians. This is the point. This is the time period where the Romulans sort of withdrew from Galactic Society for decades, um, like 80 years or something along those lines. Uh, this is the time period where the Enterprise C went down defending a Klingon outpost, something that earned the Klingons' respect, at least until season 4 of Deep Space Nine. Um, you know, it's sort of this time period of huge change. You had the changing of the guard of the Enterprise B, and the fan canon or the expanded universe canon is that ultimately the Enterprise B ended up under the command of Demora Sulu, um, the daughter of Hikaru Sulu. She was shown in briefly in Generations as the Helm officer. Um, this is the time period where people previously wanted this time period visited with Star Trek Excelsior. People wanted an Excelsior show after a anniversary episode on Voyager showed the day-to-day life of the crew of the Excelsior as Captain Janeway was sort of moving through Tuvok's memories of having served on the ship. So, having Nicholas Mayer on board, smart idea. The rest of this, not so much. I'm going to talk about sort of this news post. First of all, I want to talk about they're continuing with the streaming as a weekly series, which is going to become problematic for reasons I'm just going to jump into now. So they state at the very end of the article that the series will also be available on television stations and platforms in other countries around the world. Now, previously, when I talked about this, I mentioned that creating a distribution problem is almost it invites certain piracy. Like that's the majority of what causes piracy is I want, I need, but I can't have for whatever reason. Creating a walled garden to have something, creating a distribution problem practically invites that type of mindset. People are already paying $5, $10, if not more, for various streaming services. They're paying $70+ for Amazon Prime if they have it, and now you want them to pay an additional fee just to watch one show that they will at some point be able to buy on DVD. At some point, it will likely end up on Netflix. This is the first run. They make clear that all subsequent first run episodes will be available exclusively on CBS All Access. That's first run. That means that it will go into reruns, it will go into syndication, and it likely will end up on Netflix after a season has wrapped up, which does not do good things for your online platform when everybody has Netflix and nobody has CBS All Access. You're not incentivizing people to use your platform. You're not making it an easy decision to pay for. And after that, they also say the series will be available on television stations and platforms in other countries around the world. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about a series called Stargate SG-1. Stargate SG-1 was a very good science fiction series that aired. Oh, it was such a long time ago now. Um, but it aired for 10 years, and it seemed to be picking up steam. In fact, they had just started the year previous, in season 9, they had practically started a new show. In fact, it was initially supposed to be a new show called Stargate Command, but they decided to keep going with the SG-1 name instead, with Ben Browder as the lead, replacing or stepping in for Richard Dean Anderson. And the interest was there. People were watching it, the forums were active, the community was engaged, but at just after the 200th episode wrap-up party, they had like at 200 episodes, they had this huge milestone party. It was announced to them that the series was going to be canceled. They were going to end it. They were going to cut it off at a high note. And part of the reason why the explanation the network gave, the public explanation, was that they wanted to sort of go out on a high note, and the series was on a high note, and they didn't want it to sort of like wane into obscurity. But what the actual reason was, as clarified by Ben Browder, he theorized that it was largely the same situation they ran into with Farscape. And what that situation was is what they were doing with the series is they would air the first half of the series, and people would tune in for the first half of the series. or their first half of the season, I should probably say. They would air the first half of the season, and then they would go on a 6-month break and air the second half. But the problem was the entire season had been filmed and released, and overseas networks like Sky One over in the UK would continue airing the rest of that season. So what would happen is people over in the US with Sky One would watch it over there. And then, or they would download it. They would watch it online from like any number of video streaming sites uploaded by anybody with Sky One. But the point is, they would watch it overseas or they would watch it online. And when those actual episodes started coming out, they had already seen them. They weren't new anymore. They were essentially watching a rerun of something they had seen before, and so the viewer numbers would nosedive when those episodes would actually start running on ye old Sci-Fi Channel. And so that became a perceived waning interest in a show, which led to network executives pulling the trigger prematurely and killing the show at the height of its popularity. What you have decided to do is essentially that. That is what they are doing here. They're making that sort of that same mistake. We're going to put it in a walled garden. We're going to wall it off here and put it behind a paywall. However, it will likely also air on Sky One. So if you have cable, why? But if you do, you would watch it on Sky One and not have to pay extra. Or if you did not have access to it and you didn't have the money to invest in a monthly subscription, whatever they're charging for CBS All Access, particularly if you're already paying for tons of other online subscriptions, you could watch it online when any number of people upload it to a video sharing site after watching it on Sky One. It's the same thing that killed Stargate SG-1. It's the exact same sort of thought process that led to the perceived waning interest in Stargate SG-1 that led to its cancellation. And it wasn't just Stargate SG-1 this happened to. Remember, like I said, Ben Browder had said that this is pretty much exactly what had hit Farscape. Like, this is exactly like the problem Farscape has had, is that it was those who watched it on cable largely watched it in groups. I know that's how me and my family used to watch Star Trek, because we'd watch it together, and it would be sort of a fun evening, either pointing and laughing at Voyager, or cheering how badass Deep Space Nine would get, or shaking our heads in disbelief and disgust at Enterprise. But it was always in a group, and it was always fun to watch in a group, especially Enterprise, which I don't think I could have survived without a group handy, without a support network handy. But like those shows are often watched in groups, so you've got that working against you as far as viewer count goes. And then you're going to do something like this, which could only drive your viewers at home far lower. None of this is good news to me. So I'm not encouraging. I'm not encouraging anyone to watch it online. I'm simply stating what happened with Stargate SG-1 and the many reasons why this was a bad idea. I would prefer this series be successful. I would prefer you watch it on CBS All Access if you can afford it. I would prefer you watch it on Sky One if you can't. Or any number of other networks it will likely be broadcast on. But Sky One is almost certain. In fact, there was a certain, if I remember back in the day, there was actually a certain amount of butthurt that it was showing tons of Star Trek and nothing else. So almost certainly it will be on Sky. Now, the other sort of questionable news comes from the announcement of who's going to be co-executive producing. First of all, this show is going to have a large amount of producers on it, and it's sort of a rule of thumb. Whenever you see like a huge chain of writers attached to something, run away screaming. Too many chefs spoil the pot, and nowhere is it more true than in television production. And so this show is going to have a lot of executive producers. So that's one of the things that gave me a lot of pause. So I'm going to read off some of them. Brian Fuller is the producer slash showrunner. Brian Fuller is a Deep Space Nine alum, so he's going to have a lot of street cred with production among fans for producing a good show. Nicholas Mayer is a consulting producer. Again, that's a very smart move, especially if you're setting your show in the Lost era, which is attempting sort of rich ground for storytelling and world building. Uh, but then they also say Eugene Roddenberry. I think they're saying they meant Rod Roddenberry. um, and Trevor Roth as co-executive producers. So they likely meant Rod Roddenberry. Um, or he's Eugene Roddenberry. But I'm going to call him Rod from this point forward so as not to confuse. Gene Roddenberry has not risen from the grave. Now, Rod Roddenberry is actually not that bad a choice. Um, he served as crew on Earth Final Conflict. I'm looking at his IMDb. Uh, he is a consulting producer on New Voyages Phase 2. So the sort of fan production that sort of continues the story of the original series. He's actually a consulting producer, and that show is fairly consistently good. It doesn't have very many episodes, but they're pretty good. So that's actually I actually like that. I think that's a point in his favor that he's involved with this production, and it's clearly done. It's a passion project if there ever was one, and it's clearly done with a lot of love attached. And again, it's consistently good, so no problems there. He's also done a bunch of documentaries and shorts as a producer of those as well. He has a writing credit to Earth Final Conflict, where he wrote one episode. I haven't seen that episode, so I couldn't tell you about it. Um, but then, so Rod Roddenberry, okay, he's got some things under his belt that make that you could see how sort of like he might be, he might make a good sort of consulting producer. He's also one of the producers of Trek Nation, which is a documentary about the Trek fan base. It's on Netflix if you want to go watch it. I personally have not watched it, but that brings us to the second Trevor Roth. And Roth has about nothing. This is what gives me pause. Is he has a few short films on his IMDb and two documentaries, only one of which he was a producer of. That was Trek Nation. So Trevor Roth, kind of a strange choice for executive producer, or co-executive producer, I should say. He's known for White Room, which is a short. He's known for Instant, which is another short. Trek Nation, of course. Mystery Monsters, he was a production assistant. The Wonder of It All was a documentary, and for which he received special thanks. So the only thing he's really substantial full length thing that he's actually produced has been Trek Nation. So now he's attached as executive producer of this show. I'm not saying that he won't be good, but I don't know enough to tell you whether he could be good or bad for a production. He simply has not done that much. So that gives me pause because this show, like I said, has a lot of chefs attached to it now. And when one chef potentially does not know how to cook, that makes things even worse. That increases the likelihood that the pot will be spoiled. So again, I want this show to succeed. I want it to do really well, but there's so many things going on that are just kind of with this show. And finally, the one last thing is they have been announcing the last couple weeks that they finally found a place to film the show. The show that will debut in January 2017. The show they announced in November or December 2015. They only had a producer for, or a showrunner for, in February, I think, maybe? It was the first quarter of this year that they finally found a showrunner to run their show that they didn't know what it was going to be about yet. And they have just found a place to film in Toronto, Canada, which is fine. A lot of science fiction productions tend to move to other countries to film for various reasons. Farscape was filmed, I think, almost entirely in Australia, and either Australia or New Zealand. And the various Stargate shows were all filmed in Vancouver. So that's not something. That's not anything new. The series will begin filming this fall. This fall. They just selected. They just selected a town to film this thing in, and it will begin filming this fall to debut on January. That is an insane timetable for a television production. Especially when you have no idea what your show is about. They haven't casted this show yet. Nobody has been cast because they don't have any characters to cast. Because they don't know what the show is. They just know it's a Star Trek show. And it's going to begin filming in the fall for a January premiere. That is insanity. That is so nuts. First, this is all the things they have to do. This is all of the things they have to do before they can even begin filming. They have to develop, which means they have to figure out where their show is going to be set in the Star Trek's history, what the setting is going to be like. They essentially have to write a series Bible on the state of the universe of this fictional universe at the time period they select, whether it is the Lost Era or TNG or the original series era or like past TNG or whatever. They have to select. They have to come up with all of their cast of characters. They have to come up with their ships. They have to come up with in-universe literature to explain who these characters are and where they've come from and their ships and the ship and why it was developed and intricate details about the ship. They have to come. If you ever read the TNG technical manual, you could probably look it up online. You could see the sort of intricate detail that they had to go into while making Next Generation. That's the level of detail they're going to have to go into for this new show. So they're going to have to develop this show. Then they're going to have to cast this show. And while they're casting this show, they're going to have to build the sets. They're going to have to hire a visual effects department. They're going to have to do camera and screen tests of the sets to make sure that all the designs are good. They're going to have to design and redesign the sets to make sure that they are as good, looking as they can be while also being conducive to television filming. They've got they usually have plenty of wild walls that can be taken out so that camera crews can get in at and film at whatever angle they need. Um, there's all that they have to do. They have to write the scripts. They have to have multiple drafts of the scripts. They have to get the scripts through the network and wrestle with the higher ups, which Star Trek has always had sort of a very turbulent relationship with network execs in what will fly, what will not fly, and what should and should not happen. So I don't expect that to be easy. I expect Brian Fuller's head of hair to be very gray, if it's not very gray already, with the challenges he faces with this show. Come January, he may be a different man. Uh, then you have to go into filming. You have to go into shoots. You have to go into reshoots. Then you have to go into post production, and there's a huge list of things. You have to score it. You have to do other reshoots when the executives decide they don't like something. There's a whole laundry list of things, like a huge list of things that go into production of a television show. And pre-production for a show can take years. You know, ideally, you're beginning pre-production a year in advance of when the show is supposed to premiere. It's just like developing a video game. You either put in the time beforehand to develop something and make it good and make it usable and make it work effectively, or it falls apart when you put it in. It falls apart when you either like put it in your console or install it to your PC to play it, or when you air it. You either give it the work it needs to work properly, or it doesn't work properly. And a January premiere date is utterly insane. I would not, I can see them moving that back to early 2017 as opposed to January 2017. That will require them to bite a bullet and sort of swallow their pride a little bit. But I can see them doing that because that timetable is ridiculous. That is not, unless you are just having them produce the pilot and then just producing the episodes per month on a monthly basis, maybe I could see you making that. I don't see you making that any other way. Of course, I might just be ignorant of how television production works. There's certainly that. Take a nice drink. But this is not reassuring news to hear that the filming will begin this fall, and they will only have a couple months before January. That's not good. But that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. The second thing I wanted to talk about is Agents of Yesterday, I think it was called. The official announcement for the new Stowe expansion. Star Trek Online Agents of Yesterday. This is the new expansion that was announced this week, and I'm actually kind of excited for it. So let's get this out of the way. Apparently, I've been seeing some of the devs commenting on Twitter that people are shitting all over their expansion before having experienced it. Calm down. Okay? Keep calm. It's going, keep calm. It could be good, it could not be good. But you knew they were going to do something big for the 50th anniversary. I think everybody's caught sort of off guard by it's going to be a full-blown expansion to the game, but calm down. Okay? I give Cryptic plenty of shit in my videos. This is true. But I give them shit over things that I have experienced. So in this, at least, I am with Cryptic on this one. You need to calm down. You need to put out the flame. Like you need to like douse the flames a little bit. I know it's hard to do on the sewer. Like on the official forums, I know it's very hard to douse flames once they've been struck on that forum. That's why I don't go there anymore. That's why I hang around Reddit. But you need to calm your tits. You need to calm the calamity that is your memories over this expansion because it sounds very good. So let me talk to you about what this expansion entails. For the past few months, they've been going through some dev blogs that are sort of about the Knuckle alien Nazi remnants going after descendants of Trek characters, trying to derail the timeline. Essentially, the last blog post they did, I think, actually was a very cool story. Um, that I thought was really cool, especially because I had just been playing Onimusha, and here is a Star Trek blog post about samurai fighting what they think is a friggin' demon, So, hey, it's topical for me. Um, but yeah, it turns out Hikaru Sulu's ancestor, Yoshitaro Suru, or Suru Yoshitaro, the surname goes first. Um, it was a friggin' demon slayer. He killed a Nakul with a katana. That's really cool. Um, they also go into like Greek myth. They also sort of delve into like Greek myth, and I don't recall the names off the top of my head, and I probably should. But it's a very interesting take on a historical figure, to say the least. um, Greco-Roman figure. I'm unsure which he was. But they've been doing some really interesting things with dev blogs. I'm going to join the chorus of people who want these blogs to be available in game in some capacity because people do not always frequent the ARC website. So much of this stuff will be completely forgotten, buried beneath blog posts, never seen again, unless it's in game in some capacity. Like this creative stuff really needs to be in the game somehow. You need to have this in the game. That's simply put. If you're going to write stuff like this, people in the game need to be able to read it because not all of them frequent your website. Um, but I think people are sort of upset that it's more time travel nonsense, and okay, I don't like that either. But as for what they are doing for the game, basically they are going to be adding a new standalone campaign. Though I imagine the Klingon and Romulan characters or Romulan players are going to be feeling fairly left out. And that might be part of the reason why they're so upset. But there is essentially a second campaign now, not unlike the Delta Recruit, except this campaign is completely separate. And what it is a it's essentially almost a single player storyline set in the original series era, just after um, the end of the original Star Trek series. There was a gap. There's another gap, like I was talking about with the Lost Era. There's this gap called the Lost Years. In fact, there was a book about this gap called The Lost Years. And what this is it's the gap between the end of the original series and of the Enterprise's 5-year mission, which really covers the latter half of the Enterprise's 5-year mission, and the time period during which Kirk spends as an admiral in Starfleet, and sort of the crew of the Enterprise drifts apart while the ship is undergoing refit. Um, so yeah, there's a fairly lengthy period of time of 5 to 10 years between the original series and the motion picture, and that seems to be a window that they're going to explore. So that's an interesting prospect, especially when you consider the Nakul are targeting people who like saved the Federation. So I assume that is going to be who the player is. Is there going to be a Starfleet officer who has had a sort of destiny to fulfill, or a temporal destiny rather? It's something that they are going to do, that events in their life would carry them towards doing, and the Nakul did not want them there to do it. So that might be an interesting sort of storyline to explore. And it's not just going to be for like new characters. That would be very unfriendly to existing characters. So there's also going to be a new episode arc, a new storyline that's going to be available for like existing Romulan Federation and Klingon faction characters with new ships available for them. And I have something to say about the ships in a minute. Um, but what I think is going on with these two storylines is uh, they're taking the opportunity to do an expansion to explore this one storyline from two different angles. So you're going to have sort of like the player characters in the 25th century and the player characters from the 23rd century sort of dealing with the same problem in different places. And if you've ever read a book, there's a book that's called Star Trek Federation. And if you've never read this book, you really should, because that book is about a story that is largely sort of what I think we're seeing here, where you have Captain Kirk in the original series and Picard in TNG, shortly before Generations, sort of dealing with the same problem in two different timelines, and sort of like towards the end of that story, of those events sort of dovetail together, or not dovetail, but those threads sort of come together, and the two don't meet face to face, but the two ships do end up encountering each other at the end of the book. And it's actually a very, very good book. And I think that's what they're going for. Is they're going for the sort of story that was told in Star Trek Federation, where you're going to be seeing it unfold from two different perspectives. And I think that's a very cool way to tell a story. And that's a way to tell a story. That's a way to experience a story that I think games are uniquely suited towards. So I think that's a very, very cool idea. And if that's so, a very cool execution of this story, of like, it sounds like a really, really good idea. I'm actually really excited to see what they're doing with it. Um, so I'm actually thrilled, and I am somebody who, if you watch throughout my Rise of the Red Shirt and Star Trek Online videos, I'm super critical of Cryptic, and I keep them under a microscope, and I've cursed them out, and I've there was actually a story where Andrew wanted Bran Flakes to be on Rise of the Red Shirt, and Bran Flakes took one look at Rise of the Red Shirt and went, "That's not happening." And I don't blame him for not wanting to come on the show, because I can be fairly vicious when I think Cryptic is doing something wrong. I can be incredibly critical of them when I think they've done something wrong, when they're not doing something as well as I know that they can, when they're not allowing, when not being as creative as I know that they can be. When they take an easy way out of a situation, and sort of like half-heartedly resolve them, like with the conclusion of the Iconian War. Um, I can be very critical of them, and I can say, well, you could have done this or you could have done that, and it's all armchair storytelling, of course, but you're going to be hard pressed to find someone more critical, or at least a video smith, a video producer, or what have you, that is more outspokenly critical of Cryptic's decision making process. Um, most of the Star Trek Online shows you'll find on YouTube are much more positive about the game, much more positive about Cryptic, and that's a good thing. Um, my show is more a counterpoint to them. So uh, I am tough, but I try to be fair, and again, have been very critical, and I am excited. I was like, at the end of last year, I was burnt out on this game. Like the moment I saw that they were doing the temporal Cold War, I threw my mic on the floor and I walked away from this game. I was so burnt out with where they were going with this. We're like, oh, it's the same old shit from like the Iconian War and all the story arcs before it. We're just like fighting somebody else, stopping them from getting a super weapon. It's same old shit, same old shit. This is not the same old shit. This is something they haven't done before. This is new territory for them and for me, and it's exciting to see where it could lead. So, calm down. Do not strike the fires just yet. Put the fires out for now. We don't know what it's going to be like. They're trying something new. They're trying something much different from the Delta recruitment event. In fact, I could almost say the Delta recruitment event was an attempt to dip their toes in the water for something like this down the road. Now, if they continue making like weird single player campaigns that are split off from this game, that might constitute a problem down the road. But for now, uh, this is an anniversary thing. It looks cool. Calm down. And secondly, and I just said to calm down, and this is more of a personal thing. The universe class look-alike ships, though. These ships are powerfully ugly. Like, these ships are ridiculous looking. I know, I just said calm down. I'm being a total hypocrite here. I fully acknowledge that. This is not raging against it. Well, it might be raging against the developers a little bit. But, like, this isn't me criticizing, like, everything about this expansion. This is a very, very sort of narrow, nitpicky thing that uh, that I happened when I was looking at the ship images that were posted on Reddit. And the Universe class lookalikes look ugly. They look ugly because the Universe class is ugly. Because the Universe class was a barely designed piece of crap. I don't understand why people want to see the Enterprise J, considering the Enterprise J looks like crap. Like, the Enterprise J looks like an untextured mess. It looks like crap. Its design makes no logical sense. And you could say, oh, it's an advanced technology, but no. Like, there are things that do not change when your technology changes. For example, look at the nacelles. Oh, their technology is so advanced that their, like, nacelle pylons can be that dainty and still be completely solid. Okay, so if you've got a starship that is designed to basically host a small civilization on board it, and you have the technology to make that dainty little connection that solid, you have the technology to make that connection much more substantial, much bigger, and make the ship that much safer for the civilization it has been made to support. And perhaps most damning of all is, yes, Starfleet has the ability to make that dainty sort of connection, but then they're using the Wells class ships in the future from the Universe class, and the Wells class ships are flying bricks. And what that screams to me, and I think I've talked about this before, is that sometime after building the Universe class ships, Starfleet got a big lesson in humility from somebody, and I'd point straight to those warp nacelles getting ripped off by somebody, like fucking wings off of a fly. That's just me. The Universe class to me is a ship that screams hubris. It screams arrogance. It screams, we are the Federation and look what we can do. Why don't you join us? That might have been the intent of the universe class to as a force of personality projected into the cosmos to sort of convince people that the Federation is super cool and you want to be a part of it, you know. But it screams to me of insane hubris, and pride always comes before a fall. Um, and that's what the Wells class screams to me is the Federation fell hard after building the universe class, and they took those lessons to heart so well that hundreds of years after the universe class was shown, the universe class was shown in the 26th century. So that class of ship is not far off relatively, temporally, from where we are. But 300 years after that, they're using the Wells class ships. They're using ships like the Wells class that are all flying bricks like the Wells class. They're all much more simplistic, flat designs, far more suited to spaceflight and less elegant and dainty. That screams to me that Starfleet got its ass kicked and learned from that. That building a ship designed like a giant flying ego, like designed like your giant your massive like 2 mile long ego is probably not a good idea. So I don't like the universe class to begin with. I think it looks stupid. And these ships do not look good. They're gray and yellow and ridiculous, and their warp engines are oversized and ridiculous. They look the best of them is the cruiser with the four nacelles. That's the best looking one of them, and it still does not look very good at all. No, it's the best looking, but also you may notice all of those ships, all of the universe class variant ships, they're all carbon copies of like the other ships from the TOS. Um, Like they're all structurally or topographically, I should say, the same as the TOS versions of the ships for the Agents of Yesterday campaign. Um, so yeah, that was my big major gripe. Is the Universe class is terrible. I don't know why people like it. It sucks. These ship designs are super ugly. Why? That's it. That's my only gripe. I've actually already got a sort of in character backstory for a character in Agents of Yesterday. Like like there's a half of my character's family tree that had a proud history of Starfleet service. So I've already sort of got a character who could potentially unknowingly be working with one of their ancestors to resolve a crisis occurring across two timelines, and that's a very cool idea. That's a very fun idea to play with. So I'll be able to it's very much like what I did with the Delta recruit storyline, where I ended up choosing to do a Delta recruit, and what I did was I made him sort of a for want of a nail version of my character. So it's essentially an alternate timeline version of him. Um, and that was a fun thing to play with. And so I'm already working on a character backstory for my TOS character. So kudos. I told Andrew earlier this year that I plan to cover the game, but I don't exactly play it recreationally anymore. I'm not grinding my life away in this game, and I'm still not. They're introducing another new reputation system. Ugh, I could not be less interested. But at some point, they're just going to have to unify the reputation marks because this is ridiculous. But I'm probably going to be playing through the TOS stuff. That's going to be fun. Um, I'm unsure if I'll be covering that in Rise of the Red Shirt or it will be something different, but we shall see. It might be its own sort of side series to Rise of the Red Shirt. We will see. But I'm excited, and y'all need to chill. Calm the fuck down. Don't yell at the devs. Don't lose your minds. Play it first. And I think I've been talking for like over 40 minutes now. Yeah. This has already gone on for a while. So I'm going to leave this off here. I'm excited for Agents of Yesterday. I am deeply concerned for the fate of the new TV series. It seems that everything I read about it is screaming troubled, rushed production, and I am getting kind of worried about it. Star Wars is undergoing something of a renaissance right now. I would love to see something similar happen for Star Trek. Hopefully that will happen. But it looks like it's in trouble right now. But we'll see where this goes.